We're going to create an iOS application that is an interactive Hello World. Launch Xcode and create a new Xcode project. Choose Single View Application, and then name the product. We're going to call this Interactive Hello World. This will be a Swift application, and we're going to set the device to universal so it works on iPhone and iPad. Click Next. Choose where you want to save your project. I'm going to go to my Documents folder and create a folder called Projects. And there I will save it. I'm going to choose to not place this under source control, so I'm going to unclick Create Get Repository. Click Create. So first we're going to go to the main storyboard. We're going to select the main storyboard by looking at the list of files in the project navigator on the left and selecting it. If this left panel is not visible, use the icon in the upper right of Xcode to make it appear. So what is presented to us is the first UI view controller. This is the UI view controller that will be executed when the iOS application runs. This arrow that is here on the left indicates for us that this is the starting point for the application. So in this interactive Hello World, what we're going to have is a label in which we're going to display Hello World and a button that will cause Hello World to be displayed in the label. So in the right panel, which can be made visible by clicking on this icon in the upper right-hand corner, we're going to go to the list of objects that are available to us. So we're going to want to show the object library, and then at the bottom of the object library we're going to search for label, and we're going to take that label and drag it into the UI, and we're going to want to use auto layout constraints to indicate where we want the label to appear. So with the label selected, I'm going to center it horizontally in the container. So I'll add that constraint. So side to side it will be in the center. And I want to place it a certain distance from the top of the view. So I'm going to press the Control key and click the mouse and drag upwards and leave go, and a pop-up will appear giving us some options, and I'm going to choose top space to layout guide. This will indicate the vertical space from the top, and you'll notice that this is just slightly down from the top because it's making room for the status bar that's here at the top. We're going to double click on that line and set the distance down to 60. And then click outside of it to make it go away. If we click again on the label and double click, you'll see that the 60 appears there. We can also select the label and open up this side panel, and you'll see it says vertical space 60. Over here in the right side panel, if we select the ruler, which is the size inspector, we'll see that this is a constant of 60, and it can be set there as well. So we have our label, and now we need a button. So we're going to go back down to the object library and search for a button. And we're going to drag the button into the UI view controller, and we're going to also lay it out so that it is using auto layout constraints. And we want to have the button horizontally aligned in the container, horizontally centered. So we're going to select horizontal center in container, add one constraint, and I want the button to be a certain distance below the label itself. So I'm going to Control-click drag and go to the label and set the vertical spacing. Double-click on the blue line, and I'm going to make the vertical spacing between the label and the button be 50. So the button says button and the label says label. We're going to change these things. First, I'm going to select the button, and I'm going to, in the right panel, click on the Attributes Inspector. And instead of the button saying button, I'm going to have the button say Hello World. Maybe even better, let's say tap for Hello World. And then we're going to select the label, and instead of the label saying label, we're going to have it contain nothing, so I'm going to delete what's inside the label. I think the other thing I want to do is make sure that the content in this label is centered in the label. So I'm going to choose the text alignment center for the label. In reality, I won't need it in this case because the label, the way it is currently configured, it will automatically size to its content and be exactly the right size. And the label itself is centered in the view, so horizontally, so it will all appear centered. So we have a button and we have a label, and you notice when I click away, click on my view so that I'm clicking away from either of those, I can't see the label. If I click drag, you'll see that I can select it. If I kind of click at the right place, I can get it. One other way to get access to these two objects is in this interior left panel, which I can make appear and disappear like this. The constraints that we added are here, and they're inside the view, and also inside the view is the label and the tap for Hello World button. So I can click on label and that will make the label appear and be selected. I can click on tap for Hello World, which will make the button appear and be selected. So we have our two UI objects that we need for this interactive Hello World. But now we need some code. When the button gets clicked, we want the button to execute some code that displays content in the label. So how do we do this? Well, we're going to switch from the storyboard to the view controller, and we're going to see this is the code that is associated with the UI view controller. Let me go back to the storyboard again, select the UI view controller, click here on the identity inspector, and we'll see that the class, the code associated with this UI view controller is the class view controller. And that view controller class code is this code right here. So somehow we need to be able to access the label so we can set the text in it, and we need to be able to get an event from the button so that we can act when the button is tapped to set the text in the label. So it's going to involve some code that appears here in this view controller. And the one way to do this, the kind of the most convenient way I suppose to do it, is to select the main storyboard, make the right panel disappear so we have more space to work with, and then select this icon which is called the Assistant Editor, which will allow us to see both the UI view controller and interface builder and the code associated with it, which is the view controller. Now, I could use a little more room to work here, and so what I'm going to do is take this interior left panel and make it disappear so that I can nicely see my UI view controller and its elements and the code associated with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is create the linkage between the button and the code so that when the button is tapped, there is some code that's going to execute when that happens. And here's how we do this. We place our mouse over the button, hold down the control key, and click, and we'll see that there is a set of options available for this button. And among these options are events. So we have touch down as one option, which is an event that happens when we touch the button. We can click and drag from the touch down to the code for the view controller. And what's going to happen is when I leave up, it's going to write a method that is part of this class. That is the method that's going to get executed when the button is touched. So I want to place the code at some convenient location, and ViewDidLoad is provided for us as well as didReceiveMemoryWarning is provided for us inside this class. We're going to pick the place of creating or placing the function below these two existing methods. So I'm going to leave up, and what appears says action, and it's going to place the action in the view controller, and we need to name this. And I'm going to name this method sayHelloWorld, and that's going to happen on the touch down event, and click connect. And this method is written, sayHelloWorld, that will get executed when the button is touched. Before the function, you'll see an @IBAction. This is a necessary element and is automatically written for us in doing it the way we've done it here. So this indicates that this function serves as an interface builder action, again, for this button. So I'm going to look back here at this pop-up and notice that inside the sent event on touchdown, there is this linkage to sayHelloWorld. If I close this and just control-click again, I can see that this is set. If for some reason I need to rename this or delete this, I have to remember that this separately exists here, and I could get rid of this by hitting the little X. So that's the method that's going to get called when the button gets tapped. We now need some way to refer to the label. So we're going to do something very similar. We're going to put our mouse over the item and find it there. It's selected, so there's my label. And I'm going to control-click, and a pop-up appears. And what we want to do is create a referencing outlet to the label. This is going to create a variable inside the view controller that we can use to reference the label. So we're going to click drag from it, and we need to find a convenient place to put it. And generally, class variables are placed above the method. So between the declaration of the class and above the ViewDidLoad, I'm going to leave up on my mouse, and it says that we are creating an outlet in the view controller. We need to give it a name, and I'm going to call it the Hello World label. Click connect. And I'm going to just add one more line to separate that from the rest. What we've created here is a variable called Hello World label that is of type UI label, and it is an IBOutlet, which means it is an outlet created from Interface Builder, a linkage between the Interface Builder UI element and this variable that's inside this class. So now I have a way to refer to that label. Our next step is when Say Hello World gets called, to appropriately set the contents of the label. So I'm going to refer to the label inside this Say Hello World method as Hello World Label, and as I start to type it, Xcode recognizes that the Hello World label exists, and so it knows that's what I want, so it's going to finish it for me. All I have to do is hit enter. So we have Hello World label, and then I will hit a dot, and we'll look at the things that we can do with Hello World label. And there are quite a few things we can do with Hello World label. If we scroll down to text, one of the things we can do is reference the text of the Hello World label. So we're going to select text, and that will write the code for us. And we're going to set the text on Hello World label to Hello World exclamation point. And at the end of the line, we have our closing quote already written for us. So let's see if this works. We're going to run this by clicking the run icon, which will build the application and then run it, in this case in an iPhone 6. And we have a button that says tap for Hello World. That's what we named it. We tap it, and Hello World is displayed.